Greetings, everyone. I can't remember if I shared this story before. If I have, forgive me, those of you who've heard it. Those who haven't heard it, people joined me this week or last week. I'm sure they haven't. And I'm telling this story so I can segue into what I really want to talk about in this video. When I was 4 years old, I was living with my mother, my biological mother. Um, I was living back and forth with her, between her and my father, up until I was 4 years old. And at 4 years old, I went to live with my 4.5, I think. I went to live with my grandmother and my father. And then I left from there and went to live with my aunt, which is my father's sister, until I was 18. Sorry, until I was 17 years old. So I'm telling you back, the story goes back to when I was living with my mother. I was living in a place called Denham Town. And I remember this because when I would ask my father where I was at a particular time, he told me that's where it was. So I was living in Denham Town with my mother, and she was living in what we call a tenement yard. Tenement yard is sort of similar to rooming house in North America, except in the rooming house, you have everyone living in the same house occupying one room, but in the tenement yard, you have many houses in that one room. And so she had a room in the tenement yard, but her room was to the very back of that yard. Right behind her room was a wall, and the wall was separating where we live from another community. So if you hop that wall, you will be entering a new community. And her room was at the very back. One night we went to bed, and in the middle of the night, someone knocked on her window. And when she opened the window, someone put a gun through the window and ordered her to open the door. She opened the door, and I remember, and I don't know how as a child I would have known to do that, because when they knocked on the window, I woke up, but somehow I stayed quiet. So they came in the room and they ordered her. I think it was about three men, and they ordered her to lay down on the floor. One by one, they went and they did things to her on the floor. Of course, in a 4 year old or 4.5 year old mind, I don't know what they're doing. But after they were there having their way with my mother on the floor, one of the men said to the other one, "Look at that fat little beef," referring to me. He says, "Look at that fat beef." And the other man said to him, "You know, say a baby that. What the boy I talk about?" And he sort of squashed that argument, and I stayed still. And they left. And of course, after they left, my mother started screaming, "Thief, thief, thief." And the people in the yard, all turn on their lights, open their doors, run to the backyard where she is, the back of the yard where she lives, and ask her what was happening. And she told them that some men came in her house and robbed her. And they were saying to her, Why did you let them in? Why didn't you cry thief? From the moment they knock your door and whatever and put the gun through, why didn't you call thief? She never told them what happened to her. So, of course, after that, I went to live with my father again, who sent me to live with my aunt. And just 2 years ago, I was having a conversation with her, and I said to her, "I remember a lot of things from my childhood, living with you, and things that had happened to me while I was living with you." And she said, "Really?" And she said, "But you were so young." And I said, "Yes, I do remember." And I told her what happened. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable saying it to her, but I thought, why should I feel uncomfortable? And why should she be ashamed of that? That's not the people who did that to her. They're the ones who should be ashamed. When I was growing up and I told my, little companions that I was growing up with that somebody called me a fat beef, they mocked me. They ridiculed me as a child and said that I was a liar. And even when I got older and tried to share that story, nobody really listened to me. They said I was lying, that this person had called me a fat beef. Now I'm sharing this story because I'm doing this for all the little kids who have suffered this kind of horrible fate of being molested, having to deal with pedophiles, having to deal with incest. These individuals who carry this painful secret of adults sexually abusing them. It's a very common story in Jamaica, and it's a very common story around the world. One of the things that I want to touch on before I get out of this story is to say that we as a people are always looking towards other folks to come and rescue us and to deliver us from our suffering. And Africa today happens to be one of those places in the world that is a ramping shop and the ramping ground for pedophiles who insist on going to these places under the idea of charity. And when they go there, they're molesting our children. They're doing horrible things to our kids. I'm going to leave you a link of a video that I watched on Robert Crapper's um, channel, and it's gut wrenching. Some of you might have already seen it. It's gut wrenching to see that individuals, under the guise or the disguise that they're going to do charity, are doing these horrible things to our children. Not just our children; it's around the world. When I was in college, I remember watching this video, and I can't remember the name of it, but they were going to Thailand, and they're buying children, molesting children, big grayback pedophiles leaving from the United States of America and going to Thailand and these other places. I've seen so much documentaries. I can't remember the name of the Indian director, but she also has one to show what they were doing to children in India as well. It is really a disgrace. It's really horrible, but I feel great empathy for these young kids who have to go through this horrible thing. And thank goodness that gentleman that called me, that boy, that criminal that called me a fat beef, although they were all there committing a crime and violating my mother. Thank goodness that there's someone there who, even though he was committing an evil act, still had a conscience to say to the other one, what are you talking about? That's a kid. So if they were of the same mindset, just imagine what would have happened to me. Maybe they would have killed me. I mean, at 4.5 years old. Who knows? That kind of brutality, that kind of suffering that I would have endured. So, I feel grateful when I look back on that story. It isn't everyone that enter into our space that comes and says, I'm here to help you. And I think that is one of the things about Black folks that I find disgusting, that we're always waiting for someone else to come fix our problem. We should never be inviting anyone to come and deal with issues of poverty in Africa as far as our kids are concerned, because the thing is, those many who have caused that suffering to begin with have caused Africa to become so unstable, even though it is one of the richest continents on the earth. I mean, when you think about all the resources, it's still very much right there. But, money is concentrated and wealth is concentrated in the hands of the few, even though there's so much resources there that could spread. And I think it's shameful and disgraceful that Black people are always saying, come help us, come and deliver us. There's something inherently wrong with how our leaders are, with how men who are in positions of power in our different, African spaces are just failing their people and allowing individuals to come in and to wreak havoc. And if I didn't believe that we were sold into captivity by our own people, when I see what's happening now, it forces me to believe that there's some truth to it. Now, I know that the individuals who would sell us these stories are always trying to justify their behavior by blaming us for our own suffering. But what I'm seeing in Africa now, and so many places in Africa with some of our leaders, it would seem like it's true. Why are the governments in these different places in Africa relying on other folks to come in? And some of these folks that come in and have this great opportunity because they are non-Black, they have free will to come and set up shop and to come under this guise that they're there to do good, and they're not. And our children are suffering as a result. But it's not just Africa alone. is also Jamaica. The whole thing about sexual molestation, sexual abuse, and wanton disregard for girls and women is just heartbreaking. As a child, I remember that I never forgot it. And 2 years ago, when I told my mother that I remembered it, she was crying because she said she never told anyone because she was ashamed. She can't believe that I have those memories and that, someone witnessed what happened to her and she wasn't able to share it with anyone because she said they would have mocked her. And it is true that there are girls who experience rape and after they go through this, you see, sometimes I say to myself, people, these topics are hard to listen to. And I want money like everybody else. I just wish I could use my platform to make money. I wish I could because I need it. But you can't make money on these topics. They're not advertiser friendly. But if I have this platform, I have to use it to where to make awareness to what is happening. And many of us are aware of these things, but at least for the person who suffer in silence, who carry these burden as secrets, I'm just here to say to you, I'm sorry that that happened to you. I'm sorry you had to experience that. I'm sorry you had to endure that. And I have to get very angry with our people and say, you've got to do better, man. You've got to protect our kids better. You have to protect our people and stop allowing people, predators, from family and friends to strangers alike, to come in and continue to victimize our women and our children. We've got to do better. I'm going to link Rapa Crapper's video and you can watch it to see how missionaries have gone into Africa claiming that they're there to help people and do more damage than good. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, anyone who comes into my country and say they're doing missionary work, I'm looking at them with a jaundiced eye. I don't trust none of you. None of you I don't trust. If you are here doing charity and your heart is in the right place, eventually you would have to prove that to me. But I wasn't going to turn my back on you and just automatically trust you that what you claim you're here to do is what you're going to do because the history have not been good. And so, unfortunately, the good will suffer for the bad. I just think Black people need to fix their own business and stop depending on other folks. Other folks who are coming to Africa or to Jamaica to do whatever, got their own issues in their own country. Let them take care of their own country and you take care of your own people in your own country. It happened to my mother and I witnessed that and that, could have happened to me except for super guidance. Not that the other people or the other kids who endure that didn't have guidance. I don't know how to explain what has happened to them. I don't know why it happened to them. And I feel great empathy for these individuals because they might not have killed them physically, but spiritually, they have really killed these ones who had to experience such a horrible thing. I one day want to go to Africa. I was getting very close to that happening, but there's always something happening in my life that causes me to change my plans, but they're not canceled. They are delayed once more. But one day I hope to go and perhaps be able to meet some persons and to just to hug my brothers and my sisters and just to be able to do real charity, not one where I'm looking down at my brothers and sister like, oh, look at them, like I'm better than them, but just to share some of my resources and some of my blessings. Stay blessed, everyone.